Hey guys! Okay, I'm continuing at the top of page 408. Harry and Hermione are in the middle of this experience of going back in time to try to stop Buckbeak from being executed and use him to fly up to get Sirius where he is hiding so that he can escape and not get taken back to Azkaban. Because even though he's innocent, they know there's no way to prove it, so they're trying to help him hide. So Harry thought he saw his father helping from across the lake, and Hermione was saying, well, that's impossible because he died. So that's where we are now. The leaves overhead rustled faintly in the breeze. The moon drifted in and out of sight behind the shifting clouds. Hermione sat with her face turned toward the willow, waiting. And then at last, after over an hour, "Here we come," Hermione whispered. She and Harry got to their feet. Buckbeak raised his head. They saw Lupin, Ron, and Pettigrew clambering awkwardly out of the hole in the roots. Then came Hermione. Then the unconscious Snape drifting weirdly upward. Next came Harry and Black. They all began to walk toward the castle. Harry's heart was starting to beat very fast. He glanced up at the sky. Any moment now that cloud was going to move aside and show the moon. "Harry," Hermione muttered, as though she knew exactly what he was thinking, "we've got to stay put. We mustn't be seen. There's nothing we can do." "So we're just going to let Pettigrew escape all over again?" said Harry quietly. "How do you expect to find a rat in the dark?" snapped Hermione. "There's nothing we can do. We came back to help Sirius. We're not supposed to be doing anything else." "All right." The moon slid out from behind its cloud. They saw the tiny figures across the ground stop. Then they saw movement. "There goes Lupin," Hermione whispered. "He's transforming." "Hermione," said Harry suddenly, "we've got to move." "We mustn't. I keep telling you." "Not to interfere. Lupin's going to run into the forest, right at us." Hermione gasped. "Quick!" she moaned, dashing to untie Buckbeak. "Quick! Where are we going to go? Where are we going to hide? The Dementors will be coming any moment." "Back to Hagrid's," Harry said. "It's empty now. Come on." They ran as fast as they could, Buckbeak cantering along behind them. They could hear the werewolf howling behind them. The cabin was in sight. Harry skidded to the door, wrenched it open, and Hermione and Buckbeak flashed past him. Harry threw himself in after them and bolted the door. Fang the boarhound barked loudly. "Shh, Fang, it's us," said Hermione, hurrying over and scratching his ears to quieten him. "That was really close," she said to Harry. "Yeah." Harry was looking out of the window. It was much harder to see what was going on from here. Buckbeak seemed very happy to find himself back inside Hagrid's house. He lay down in front of the fire, folded his wings contentedly, and seemed ready for a good nap. "I think I'd better go outside again, you know," said Harry slowly. "I can't see what's going on. We won't know when it's time." Hermione looked up. Her expression was suspicious. "I'm not going to try and interfere," said Harry quickly. "But if we don't see what's going on, how are we going to know when it's time to rescue Sirius?" "Well, okay, then. I'll wait here with Buckbeak. But Harry, be careful. There's a werewolf out there. And the Dementors." Harry stepped outside again and edged around the cabin. He could hear yelping in the distance. That meant the Dementors were closing in on Sirius. He and Hermione would be running to him any moment. Harry stared out toward the lake, his heart doing a kind of drum roll in his chest. Whoever had sent that Patronus would be appearing at any moment. For a fraction of a second he stood, irresolute, in front of Hagrid's door. You must not be seen. But he didn't want to be seen. He wanted to do the seeing. He had to know. And there were the Dementors. They were emerging out of the darkness from every direction, gliding around the edges of the lake. They were moving away from where Harry stood to the opposite bank. He wouldn't have to get near them. Harry began to run. He had no thought in his head except his father. If it was him, if it really was him, he had to know, had to find out. The lake was coming nearer and nearer, but there was no sign of anybody. On the opposite bank he could see tiny glimmers of silver, his own attempts at a Patronus. There was a bush at the very edge of the water. Harry threw himself behind it, peering desperately through the leaves. On the opposite bank the glimmers of silver were suddenly extinguished. A terrified excitement shot through him. Any moment now. "Come on," he muttered, staring about. "Where are you? Dad, come on." But no one came. Harry raised his head to look at the circle of Dementors across the lake. One of them was lowering its hood. It was time for the rescuer to appear, but no one was coming to help this time. And then it hit him. He understood. He hadn't seen his father. He had seen himself. Harry flung himself out from behind the bush and pulled out his wand. "Expecto Patronum!" he yelled, and out of the end of his wand burst, Not a shapeless cloud of mist, but a blinding, dazzling silver animal. He screwed up his eyes, trying to see what it was. It looked like a horse. It was galloping silently away from him across the black surface of the lake. He saw it lower its head and charge at the swarming Dementors. Now it was galloping around and around the black shapes on the ground, and the Dementors were falling back, scattering, retreating into the darkness. They were gone. The Patronus turned. It was cantering back toward Harry across the still surface of the water. It wasn't a horse. It wasn't a unicorn either. It was a stag. It was shining brightly as the moon above. It was coming back to him. It stopped on the bank. Its hooves made no mark on the soft ground as it stared at Harry with its large silver eyes. Slowly it bowed its antlered head. And Harry realized. "Prongs!" he whispered. But as his trembling fingertips stretched toward the creature, it vanished. Harry stood there, hands still outstretched. Then, with a great leap of his heart, he heard hooves behind him. He whirled around and saw Hermione dashing toward him, dragging Buckbeak behind her. "What did you do?" she said fiercely. "You said you were only going to keep a lookout." "I just saved all our lives," said Harry. "Get behind here, behind this bush. I'll explain." Hermione listened to what had just happened with her mouth open yet again. "Did anyone see you?" "Yes, haven't you been listening? I saw me, but I thought I was my dad. It's okay." "Harry, I can't believe it. You conjured up a Patronus that drove away all those Dementors? That's very, very advanced magic." "I knew I could do it this time," said Harry, "because I'd already done it. Does that make sense?" "I don't know. Harry, look at Snape!" Together they peered around the bush at the other bank. Snape had regained consciousness. He was conjuring stretchers and lifting the limp forms of Harry, Hermione, and Black onto them. A fourth stretcher, no doubt bearing Ron, was already floating at his side. Then, wand held out in front of him, he moved them away toward the castle. "Right, it's nearly time," said Hermione tensely, looking at her watch. "We've got about 45 minutes until Dumbledore locks the door to the hospital wing. We've got to rescue Sirius and get back into the ward before anybody realizes we're missing." They waited, watching the moving clouds reflected in the lake, while the bush next to them whispered in the breeze. Buckbeak, bored, was ferreting for worms again. "Do you reckon he's up there yet?" said Harry, checking his watch. He looked up at the castle and began counting the windows to the right of the west tower. "Look!" Hermione whispered. "Who's that? Someone's coming back out of the castle." Harry stared through the darkness. The man was hurrying across the grounds toward one of the entrances. Something shiny glinted in his belt. "McNair!" said Harry. "The executioner! He's gone to get the Dementors! This is it, Hermione!" Hermione put her hands on Buckbeak's back, and Harry gave her a leg up. Then he placed his foot on one of the lower branches of the bush and climbed up in front of her. He pulled Buckbeak's robe back over his neck and tied it to the other side of his collar like reins. "Ready?" he whispered to Hermione. "You'd better hold on to me." He nudged Buckbeak's sides with his heels. Buckbeak soared straight into the dark air. Harry gripped his flanks with his knees, feeling the great wings rising powerfully beneath them. Hermione was holding Harry very tight around the waist. He could hear her muttering, "Oh no, I don't like this. Oh, I really don't like this." Harry urged Buckbeak forward. They were gliding quietly toward the upper floors of the castle. Harry pulled hard on the left-hand side of the rope, and Buckbeak turned. Harry was trying to count the windows flashing past. "Whoa," he said, pulling backward as hard as he could. Buckbeak slowed down, and they found themselves at a stop, unless you counted the fact that they kept rising up and down several feet as the hippogriff beat his wings to remain airborne. "He's there!" Harry said, spotting Sirius as they rose up beside the window. He reached out and as Buckbeak's wings fell, was able to tap sharply on the glass. Black looked up. Harry saw his jaw drop. He leapt from his chair, hurried to the window, and tried to open it, but it was locked. "Stand back!" Hermione called to him, and she took out her wand, still gripping the back of Harry's robes with her left hand. "Alohomora!" The window sprang open. How, said Black weakly, staring at the hippogriff. "Get on, there's not much time," said Harry, gripping Buckbeak firmly on either side of his sleek neck to hold him steady. "You've got to get out of here. The Dementors are coming. McNair's gone to get them." Black placed a hand on either side of the window frame and heaved his head and shoulders out of it. It was very lucky he was so thin. In seconds he had managed to fling one leg over Buckbeak's back and pull himself onto the hippogriff behind Hermione. "Okay, Buckbeak up," said Harry, shaking the rope. "Up to the tower. Come on." The hippogriff gave one sweep of its mighty wings, and they were soaring upward again, high as the top of the west tower. Buckbeak landed with a clatter on the battlements, and Harry and Hermione slid off him at once. Sirius, you'd better go quick, Harry panted. They'll reach Flitwick's office any moment. They'll find out you're gone. Buckbeak pawed the ground, tossing his sharp head. What happened to the other boy, Ron? Croaked Sirius. He's going to be okay. He's still out of it, but Madame Pomfrey says she'll be able to make him better. Quick, go! But Black was still staring down at Harry. How can I ever thank you? Go! Harry and Hermione shouted together. Black wheeled Buckbeak around, facing the open sky. We'll see each other again, he said. You are truly your father's son, Harry. He squeezed Buckbeak's sides with his heels. Harry and Hermione jumped back as the enormous wings rose once more. The hippogriff took off into the air. He and his rider became smaller and smaller as Harry gazed after them. Then a cloud drifted across the moon. They were gone. Okay, chapter 22, Owl Post Again. Cute. Looks like Hedwig, I think. Harry! Hermione was tugging at his sleeve, staring at her watch. We've got exactly 10 minutes to get back down to the hospital wing without anybody seeing us, before Dumbledore locks the door. Okay, said Harry, wrenching his gaze from the sky. Let's go. They slipped through the doorway behind them and down a tightly spiraling stone staircase. As they reached the bottom of it, they heard voices. They flattened themselves against the wall and listened. It sounded like Fudge and Snape. They were walking quickly along the corridor at the foot of the staircase. Only hope Dumbledore's not going to make difficulties, Snape was saying. The kiss will be performed immediately. As soon as McNair returns with the Dementors. This whole Black affair has been highly embarrassing. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to informing the Daily Prophet that we've got him at last. I dare say they'll want to interview you, Snape, and once young Harry's back in his right mind, I expect he'll want to tell the Prophet exactly how you saved him. Harry clenched his teeth. He caught a glimpse of Snape's smirk as he and Fudge passed Harry and Hermione's hiding place. Their footsteps died away. Harry and Hermione waited a few moments to make sure they'd really gone, then started to run in the opposite direction. Down one staircase, then another, along a new corridor, then they heard a cackling ahead. Peeves! Harry muttered, grabbing Hermione's wrist. In here! They tore into a deserted classroom to their left just in time. Peeves seemed to be bouncing along the corridor in boisterous good spirits, laughing his head off. Oh, he's horrible, whispered Hermione, her ear to the door. I bet he's all excited because the Dementors are going to finish off Sirius. She checked her watch. 3 minutes, Harry. They waited until Peeves' gloating voice had faded into the distance, then slid back out of the room and broke into a run again. Hermione, what'll happen if we don't get back inside before Dumbledore locks the door? Harry panted. I don't want to think about it, Hermione moaned, checking her watch again. 1 minute. They had reached the end of the corridor with the hospital wing entrance. Okay, I can hear Dumbledore, said Hermione tensely. Come on, Harry. They crept along the corridor. The door opened. Dumbledore's back appeared. I am going to lock you in, they heard him saying. It is 5 minutes to midnight. Miss Granger, 3 turns should do it. Good luck. Dumbledore backed out of the room, closed the door, and took out his wand to magically lock it. Panicking, Harry and Hermione ran forward. Dumbledore looked up, and a wide smile appeared under the long silver mustache. Well, he said quietly. We did it, said Harry breathlessly. Sirius is gone on Buckbeak. Dumbledore beamed at them. Well done. I think... He listened intently for any sound within the hospital wing. Yes, I think you've gone too. Get inside. I'll lock you in. Harry and Hermione slipped back inside the dormitory. It was empty except for Ron, who was still lying motionless in the end bed. As the lock clicked behind them, Harry and Hermione crept back to their own beds, Hermione tucking the time-turner back under her robes. A moment later, Madame Pomfrey came striding back out of her office. Did I hear the headmaster leaving? Am I allowed to look after my patients now? She was in a very bad mood. Harry and Hermione thought it best to accept their chocolate quietly. Madame Pomfrey stood over them, making sure they ate it, but Harry could hardly swallow. He and Hermione were waiting, listening, their nerves jangling. And then, as they both took a 4th piece of chocolate from Madame Pomfrey, they heard a distant roar of fury echoing from somewhere above them. What was that? Said Madame Pomfrey in alarm. Now they could hear angry voices growing louder and louder. Madame Pomfrey was staring at the door. Time's up, guys.